Hello everyone, my name is Min and I'm your dead DM, and animation is still under attack. Please, please, please go look at Animation Ignite on Twitter and check out the tag, the Animation Guild's information about how you can help. But today we are going to do something that I've been wanting to do for a while. So, 3 years ago, I was making really informative videos, highly scripted information. I did a video about critique. I did a video about first Black animators in the US, and I did a video about like motion media and what that is in the industry. But I wanted to do a video about the history of women in animation, and I don't have the brain power right now, or maybe even ever again, to do like long scripted videos. We'll see how that goes. But really what I wanted to do when researching for that video forever ago, I found a video called Making of Disney Snow White, or How Disney Cartoons Are Made. And that was going to be in the video, kind of highlighting the animation process for Disney. I know I just did a Disney video, but what we're actually talking about today is historically how Disney cartoons were made, with the intention of showing that the purpose of the artistry of animation has always been reliant on artists. That's the whole thing TAG is fighting for, is to not remove the animators and the artists and the writers from the process of animation. AI is a huge part of the discussion. I think it's important that one of the big parts of art and media literacy is you're trying to communicate something with what you make. There is a literacy to art that requires you to be communicating an idea to your audience. And if AI is just regurgitating things that it has taken and vomiting back something likable, that is no longer communication. That is very hollow. That is very product for the purpose of product and not art. We're going to cut over to this 8-minute and 30-second video about making Snow White and Disney cartoons. Immediately, it's very old. It's a very, very old thing. Sorry about that.
From Hollywood comes the most exciting motion picture news of 1938. Walt Disney has completed and released his first full-length feature production.
Also, quick pause. In All-Nighter Survival Guide stuff currently right now, I have uploaded Mickey Mouse addressing the public domain, because now that he's a public domain character, he exists in the All-Nighter canon. The fantastic voice actor I have for Mickey Mouse does a transatlantic accent for him. That's what that whole like old Hollywood is supposed to be. It has the base of a normal voice, unlike the old times. But so many people in the comments, thank you so much for the almost 4,000 people that have watched this. But like, Mickey Mouse is secretly British. You cannot change my mind. Those comments were driving me insane. Thank you for taking the time to comment on my little animation. And if you want to watch that video, it's going to be linked in the description now. But
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in Technicolor, the most daring adventure in screen entertainment since the birth of the motion picture. Its credit titles, longest in cinema history, flash across the nation's screens. Audiences for the first time realized the tremendous amount of manpower required for the production of this epoch-making animated picture.
There it is! Play it again!
Audiences for the first time realized the tremendous amount of manpower required for the production of this epoch-making animated picture.
The tremendous amount of manpower required.
The tremendous amount of manpower for this epic animated adventure. Like, I know as business goes, you want to cut things down. You want to make it streamlined. You want to make it streamlined. You want to limit how many people are working, whatever. But the artistry comes from the getting together and working together and communicating with a lot of art.
The entirely new form of storytelling that already has captivated every man, woman, and child who has seen it. Just how was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs created? And how are the famous Disney short films made? To give you the answer, we take you behind the closed doors of the famed Walt Disney Studio in Hollywood. Doors usually barred to all visitors. During the past 3 years, the studio staff has grown from less than 300 to more than 700 artists and musicians.
700 artists and musicians in the studio. 300 to 700. Incredibly interesting. And now they're trying for no artists.
They worked in shifts, night and day, to complete this unique experiment in entertainment.
That's another thing is, I know technology has changed, but they used to, in this early day of animation, they used to run it like factory working. They had day shifts, they had night shifts, An industry requires manpower. I know as technology advances, yes, you can cut that down a little, but when your industry is creating art, I think there is an important amount of artists that have to be present in that.
Remember as a kid how you made your own movies by drawing little figures on the pages of a pad and flipping the pages to make the figures move? That's the basic principle behind animated pictures today. But that's not all there is to it. First, you need a story. Picking up funny stories is the job of Walt Disney's writers, gag men, and sketch artists. After much trial and error, several hundred rough drawings illustrating the high points of each story are completed. Let's follow the story into conference.
Okay, stories in conference, this is what storyboarding started out in as well in the past. So storyboards are called storyboards because they used to literally put drawings about what's going to happen in the story up on a board, and then they would present it.
Where Walt Disney and his hard-boiled directors look it over. Not a picture, long or short, goes into production without Walt's personal okay.
Okay, so they kind of skip over it. So that's what storyboards used to be. I think I had a history of animation video, I think. I talk about the Baby Weem segment from the Reluctant Dragon that kind of showed what storyboards used to look like. Storyboards are no longer, they want you to do key animation for your storyboards. Hold on. While I'm looking for a good example of a AI-generated storyboards, get out of here. Okay, here's like a really nice series. So a lot of these might be early like storyboards.
Listen to me.
Yeah.
Just look at it, Mama. Doesn't it just make you want to cry?
Oh, this might be interesting for a future video, that kind of doing the evolution of storyboards.
Hey, big guy.
Yeah, that's where it's starting with 3D, is they're kind of getting small movements in there.
Just take this slow.
Yeah, see that action? Let me turn that down so this doesn't get copyright. But see all that action in this storyboard? Storyboards, again, they didn't used to be like this. What's the newest storyboard? Okay, that'll be a good one. This one's from Luca. Let's turn the volume kind of...
Visto il giornale today.
Ugh, that photo's a fake, Papa. Everyone in Porto Rosso pretends to believe in sea monsters.
Yeah, see, it's way more animated than it used to be.
Well, I'm not pretending.
That's so down to the letter. Oh my goodness. So they're basically doing actual like the key animation for these CG movies. Anyway, that's not what storyboarding used to be. I'm getting off track.
A director whips the script and dialogue into final form. Then he calls in his assistants, including his musical composer, and plans the score of the picture, timing out each scene carefully. He even acts out every move of the action, so that the men who work with him can visualize what the scene will look like on the screen.
They were actually acting it out and moving it out. And that is, if you're doing the movements in real life, that can get you a really good idea of what you're actually going to be doing on screen.
Now he sets his expert animators to work, the skilled artists who draw every movement in complete detail, just as you will see it in the theater. Each animator's drawing board is lighted from below. He looks through the paper at the character he has previously outlined and draws the next movement in correct position. This clever animator is using a mirror to capture a tricky facial expression like this. Let's move along to the test camera department. Here the animator's rough drawings are photographed in sequence, one at a time. This film is developed and returned to the animator, who checks to see how good it is by running it in a small projection machine called a moviola. In this moviola, as the animator runs his film backward and forward, we catch a graceful glimpse of the screen's newest heroine, Snow White herself. Now we're in one of the studio projection rooms, where Walt and his staff study the rough animation of a sequence about the 7 lovable little dwarfs.
Yeah, so that's something that happens in animation as well, is there are check-ins to kind of watch the process of how the animation is going. The team is going back and watching things and seeing what it's looking like, which is why it doesn't make any sense for high-up executives to be like, no, come back in and change that later on, because they had the whole production to watch what it was looking like. Also, if they're not doing it like that anymore, they should be. Like, that's my thing, is it's like, if that's not standard in the industry, I haven't been in main industry for a very long time, but if that's not happening in main industry anymore, it should be. That should be bare minimum. is like, hey, watch it a couple of times while it's being made so you don't have to go back and do expensive redos later. This is for live action and for animation, by the way. It could be so easy.
Once they are okayed, the thousands of pencil drawings go to the inking department.
Oh my god, this was the original reason I found this, the inking department. Listen very closely to how he talks about the inking department.
Here, hundreds of pretty girls in a comfortable building all their own, well lighted, air conditioned throughout, cover the drawings with sheets of transparent celluloid.
Isn't that insane? Hundreds of pretty girls in a building all their own so the men cannot look at them. Don't worry, it's air conditioned and it's very comfortable. I find it so incredibly strange. Like, I understand it was just like that back then, and honestly, an area by themselves was probably safer. I don't know, but it's insane to think about.
Then they painstakingly trace every line of every drawing in ink, following exactly in every detail the original animation drawings. Now the picture moves into its final stage, color. In the studio paint laboratory, all colors used are made up from secret formulas. Chemists develop more than 1,500 different shades of color for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah, so she's having to use, like, if you do a lot of art for different things, like working with resin, you have to have those respirators, but it's really interesting, just expert chemist, and it's just a woman mixing the most dangerous chemicals you can imagine for animation. You know, the guys are using, like, ink and paper, and they're using, like, highly industrial chemicals as paint.
The ink celluloids next go to the painting department, where more pretty girls apply the final colors on the back.
Where more pretty girls. There is something so incredibly... I know it was a different time, but more pretty girls.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs required 250,000 celluloids painted like this one.
250,000? Is that the number he said?
250,000 celluloids.
250,000. So, between the animators doing 250,000 pages of animation and the inkers and cleanup and colorists doing $250,000 of pages of celluloids, that's like 250,000 frames. That's a lot of work. So think that translates into modern day as well, I believe. It's always been 24 frames a second for animation when it's 2D like this. So imagine that's still, for a film the length of Snow White, it would still be roughly 250,000 frames.
In another department of the big Disney studio, artists delicately paint the beautiful stage settings for the picture. These backgrounds are done in watercolor. Artists work for months on backgrounds like the interior of the Seven Dwarfs cottage.
Watercolor is such pretty for backgrounds. I think having traditional media put into animation, like actual physical watercolor backgrounds, is incredibly cool. I think it looks really nice.
But the colossal task isn't finished even yet. The celluloids and backgrounds must still be photographed by the master camera in Technicolor. Here the operator puts a Donald Duck celluloid on top of a background as the overhead camera exposes one frame of film.
Yeah, so if you aren't aware, a celluloid is basically just a transparent sheet of plasticky paper that can go over a background. That's very self-explanatory. It was created by the Brace Studio and was used for that was the technology that really propelled animation to be what it can be today, is having transparent cells on a background. And it revolutionized and industrified the medium.
To photograph Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, this operation had to be repeated more than 500,000 times. Next, the film passes into the hands of technicians, and the sound effects are recorded.
That face. That's another thing that's so charming about really, really old cartoons is 2D animation allows you to suspend your disbelief to a point. You're seeing them make these sound effects right now with different objects. They didn't need the actual sounds, and that, I feel like that adds to the charm of old movies, is it's like just the suspension of disbelief that you can get from animation that allows fantastical stories to be told. I think is really important because it allows you to conceptualize things that might be really difficult in live action. Except glass!
Finally,
Glass
a
is
symphony
glass.
orchestra records the musical score, the hit tunes that will thrill listeners the world over. Now comes a crucial moment, the picture's world premiere in Hollywood. Crowds flock to see an animation exhibit set up outside the theater.
Yeah, so this was another thing, is the marketing they had for old movies. It was so difficult to make movies like this back in the day that just the sheer amount of marketing for it and the amount of excitement an audience can get, that's something I think modern animation is missing out on, is executives and the industry right now is like, we got to push out content fast. We got to make it real fast. We got to give these idiots buying our product constant stimulation so they keep giving us constant streams of money, even though the economy's really bad. So many people just want something to be excited for. And if you're pumping stuff out fast, like so many things really, really fast, you can alienate an audience. And I think there are ways to market a film kind of like this expo. Like, wouldn't it be cool, instead of seeing what the movie is, seeing some of the background, like the behind the scenes stuff? I think that would be super cool. Kind of like, I think it was Disney who used to do like separate scenes, like they animated basically short films for the commercial that had nothing to do with the actual film. I love that. Don't show me anything about the film, but you can show me the characters and like. So I miss this. I was not alive for this, obviously, but I miss this element of rallying together for animation and having this kind of stuff public.
And to enjoy Dwarfland, a miniature village with real dwarfs. When the picture opens at the famed Carthay Circle Theater, every star and executive in the movie colony turns out to pay tribute to the genius of Walt Disney. Leo Spitz, president of RKO Radio Pictures. Mickey and Minnie Mouse.
Look at them. They got pointy little faces. I don't understand why the Mickey and Minnie furry suit looks so much worse than the Donald Duck one. Also, this guy right here kind of looks like my dad. Moving on.
And Donald Duck. Bob Burns and the Seven Dwarfs. Shirley Temple, Marlena Dietrich, and Doug Fairbanks Jr. Luella Parsons, famous movie critic. And Walt Disney himself, to present to the world his greatest achievement. Next day, newspaper and magazine critics rave about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Usually hard-boiled reviewer of Time magazine.
Okay, Snow White is as exciting as a Western, as funny as a haywire comedy. It combines the classic idiom of folklore drama with the ricketing comic strip humor, a combination of Hollywood, the Grimm's brothers, and the sad, searching fantasy of universal childhood. It is an authentic masterpiece to be shown in theaters and beloved by new generations long after. I think it's interesting to read it.
More than 3 million paintings and drawings like these were created by Walt Disney and his staff of artists to complete this entertainment triumph at a cost of more than $1.5 million.
How much is that in modern money? Okay, inflation calculator real quick. In 1939, I purchased an item for $1.5 million. In 2024, that would be 33 million nine. I'm so bad at reading numbers. This much. The cumulative rate of inflation is over 2,000. How much does it cost to do a movie now? I don't want your AI overview. Average movie budget is $65 million. How, according to Quoria, Toy Story 3 was approximately $200 million. So they really didn't spend that much on this. I mean, I know it was the second feature-length animated movie to ever exist, but think about this. If they spent not even $40 million on Snow White, and I don't know how long it took them to make Snow White, but let's just $1.5 million, divided by the 700 workers. Each person only got paid $2,000. So people were getting paid basically, and again, I don't know how long it took. If it took a year, that's a year. If it took less than that, that's less than that, but whatever. They were getting paid about that much for the entirety of the Snow White thing. That's more money than I would have made as a teacher if I had stuck with that, even for a couple years period. I'm getting really off track, but divided by, let's say it was 12.6. Just to be very nice. I think the most I ever made in a year was like 14. So let's just be really nice. I could have lived almost 4 years off of that when I was still making the amount I was as a teacher. So assuming that they could live on in the 30s as much as I had to live on as a teacher, that's like 4 years. I'm so off track. Let's continue. The main takeaway from this is that animators need more money and always have. And I need more money.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs broke every box office record at a Carthay Circle Theater. Audiences universally acclaim it as something entirely new in motion pictures. They love its new and amazing characters. Snow White, warm, human. They thrill to its love story, tender and romantic. They remember its music, its 8 big new song hits. They laugh uproariously at the most amusing characters Walt Disney has ever created, 7 Little Dwarfs.
That's another thing is I miss when Disney's feature-length film style was more human. Like that was kind of the fun thing about Snow White and the earlier films is that there was a very human nature. Animation was actually referencing life, kind of like different but similar to the way Miyazaki films reference life. And I like the style of some of the newer animation movies. Like I like Frozen and stuff. But, like, so many films are now doing that big, doe-eyed, don't look at me, don't look at me, that big, doe-eyed, kind of, like, wide, large eyes on a face, and, like, a cute little face with big doe. Don't look at me!
But let Walt Disney tell you about them himself.
Dwarfs' names fit their personalities. This pompous-looking individual is Doc, the self-appointed leader of the group. And this little fellow is Bashful. He's secretly in love with Snow White. Face is Sneezy. He has hay fever. And old Droopy Eyes is called Sleepy. And Happy here with the beaming smile. And old Sourpuss here is Grumpy, the woman hater.
The woman hater! So, Bashful, who is unrequitedly in love with Snow White, and then the woman hater.
And last but not least is Dopey. He's nice, but sort of silly.
I think Disney is a weird guy in history because, like, there's something kind of charming about him, his awful little face. There's something kind of charming about him looking at these figures and kind of talking about his character. I relate to that. I relate to wanting to talk about my characters and just being a goofy little guy.
Their personalities. This pompous-looking individual is Doc. And old Droopy Eyes is called Sleepy. And old Sourpuss here is Grumpy, the woman hater. He's nice, but sort of silly.
The little smile! So, yeah, I've been wanting to share that little video forever. I will link it down in the description below. But kind of the takeaway from this is that animation has not been around for that long. Like, this medium is only roughly 100 years old. And the charm of it, like, mixed feelings about Disney personally, but there is something so charming about the way he talks about his characters. Characters have to... I think even Disney would be like, I don't want an AI making my stuff. I want iWorks to do it. So I've been screaming for 41 minutes about this 8-minute video. So thank you everyone for watching. My name is Min. I've been your Dead DM. And by the time this video goes up, I will have made a Google form. So if you have ideas for me to talk about in the future, you can submit them down below in the Google form. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and have a wonderful day.